Two village idiots with a love-hate relationship.
See, you got fat. So you still look like a 15-year-old girl, but not hot.
Who can't stop arguing over Oklahoma sports.
You know what, man? Why am I still talking to you?
Come on, we were doing good there, man.
It's the Just Okay Sports Podcast, hosted by Troy and Daryl.
Sooner Nation, Thunder Nation, we are back. This is the Just Okay Sports Podcast. I'm one of your village idiots, Daryl. I am here with my brother, J-Rod, who I sent you an intro without Troy's name. With no names, actually.
I know. I'm sorry. I had to reboot my PC. Apparently, my profile didn't save on my GoXLR.
I feel like that this is absolute shenanigans right now to get Nemo and the rest of the squad after me is what I think this is.
Maybe. I mean, but we can't confirm or deny. So anyways, getting into the intro and just hanging out, you know.
My gosh.
No.
By the way, if you end up liking, we are going to talk on this podcast for your first time listener, never caller, because we don't have a line. We talk a lot of Sooner football. We talk a lot of Sooner softball. We'll talk some basketball even on occasion. We talk Thunder basketball a lot as well as sprinkling some other things. But those are our main focus. That's why it's the Just Okay Sports Podcast. So please subscribe, like, and leave a 5-star review. All helps us a lot. We also have a merch store at Redbubble at Just Okay Sports on Redbubble. So find us over there as well. We've got our Dylan Gabriel merch up over there. We've got just some Just Okay merch. And if you're still salty about Lincoln Riley, we've got Lincolnite shirts as well with a little Rush 3 Drop 8 look to it. So go check all those things out. So pod almost didn't happen tonight, bro. You had power outages. We're having audio issues, which if you're listening to the live stream, we apologize.
So for those that are curious, so we do live stream this on Twitch most of the time, like 95% of the time now. And I'm actually, I just pulled up an article. Apparently there's some issue with Zoom and OBS, which is what I use to broadcast on Twitch. So I don't know. But yes, my power went out and it was the weirdest thing. So my power goes out. So I knew, I looked at my weather app earlier and there was like a chance of rain, and like we got rain like Monday or Tuesday or whatever day it was. Finally, we've been dying for it.
Yeah.
And it just came downpour. And then and what was funny is it wasn't like severe by any stretch, but it's like the power grid forgot how to handle any sort of weather. And so my power, and what's bad is I was smoking drumsticks, and my power kept flashing, so I had to go out like 15 times and reset my smoker in the rain.
God.
And it was so frustrating. But anyway, earlier my power went out. Like, I don't know what happened. It was like it flashed on and off like 50 times. Like, it looked like if I looked down the hall, it looked like a freaking rave because my bathroom light was on, and it was just like flashing on and off for like, I don't know, like 10 minutes. I don't even know. So, but yeah, that's what it is living here in Oklahoma, I guess. I don't know. Living out in the middle of the sticks, I guess. So,
just crazy. So it always something to try to make this very average podcast even more below average than it already is. So it just kind of is. So let's jump right to it, man, because there's a lot to talk about. Now, this first one, everybody knows is coming. We're going to talk about the Gundy stuff. It has already been talked about ad nauseum, but I do think it is fair to the people who listen to our pod kind of just, go through it. And not to mention, BV finally had a press conference today as well. So
which he did say, like, he led off and he was like, I know everybody's going to want to ask about the Cale Gundy situation, and I don't want to talk about that incident in particular or whatever. And he didn't, and kudos to the reporters over there. They didn't really ask, but there was a couple of questions that kind of, I was gonna say they asked a couple that were around the realm of it, but it was kind of, they framed it more where it was like LaDainian Washington, like, what's he like, or, whatever. So,
yeah. Or how's the team? How do you galvanize a team? Is this, timing stuff, though, things like what's the coaching search, etc. But let's just go back. I mean, dude, this was maybe as shocking, probably even more. It was actually more shocking than the Lincoln Riley stuff, because it was very similar for me. I had gone to bed was out, got up the next morning, brushed my teeth, got ready, and opened up and saw notifications everywhere on my phone saying that Cale Gundy had resigned. And I was like, whoa. I mean, I could, and then to find out what the reasoning was just even crazier. So that's, I don't know how or when you found out, if you were streaming gaming stuff but just again, kind of when and where were you, and what was your initial reactions, and then kind of where are you at now, J-Rod?
I mean, at first it was obviously a very weird situation that you wouldn't expect, because Cale is that guy that's been so highly regarded by everybody that's played for him, from Adrian Peterson to Quentin Griffin to DeMarco, Joe Mixon, Samaje. I mean, yeah. Joe flat out said the only reason he stayed at Oklahoma was because of Cale, and he went to big bat for Cale, and a lot of guys did. Even DeMarco, who's on the staff, came out and said, he's a good friend. What happened shouldn't have happened, but I still love him. Blah blah blah. So
but to be clear, I hold on. I want to clarify that just so people don't, because that's been kind of the ban. DeMarco went to bat for him in his character, but he also said it's unacceptable. Whereas Joe Mixon, if you read his, basically said this is not right. Like, Joe was very much on the side, you should not be making this decision. At least that was very much the tone of his. So just to, he very much defended who he was.
Yeah, he flat out said in his letter, like, OU needs to reinstate him or he won't agree with it or something. Now, but yeah, I mean, so when it first happened, like I said, I was kind of in shock, and of course you kind of you worry, because Cale's been so integral. Like you could always lean on Cale because you knew Cale was going to be there, right? Like you always knew Cale was going to be around. Cale was going to was that consistent thing that you've had for, he's been at OU for 24 years or something now, or
23 years,
and so it's crazy to look at him in that way and be like, now he's gone, so how is that going to affect a program that's obviously already had massive turnover, right? Like he was one of the few things that was left. But as kind of time went on, it's like, the more I've read about LaDainian, which we're going to get into in a minute, but the more I've read about LaDainian Washington, who's his interim wide receiver coach, I don't know that they could have found somebody much better than him, at least on that short of notice. The fact that they had him laying around on staff is pretty huge. But yeah, I mean, so right now it's I kind of I feel bad and I hate it for Cale, and I hate how much other fan bases are trying to turn it into something that's not. How Deadspin is getting in. I don't know if you saw that whole deal about their article.
I did see that, yes, and I would recommend you not click on the Deadspin link, but you can go to Eddie Radosevich's Twitter account and find the article link, and I as well quote tweeted it as well to call it an absolute joke through our Just Okay account.
Yeah, well, and to clarify, in the article it said based on Twitter, our sourced from Twitter or something.
Sources on Twitter.
It's bro, come on.
And it was a Texas troll account
that
is? No longer exists because Twitter shut them down for their false information.
Yeah, and it's funny because the whole thing is just insane, but it's been funny because, like you said, Texas, some of the reasonable Texas fans have actually come to, like you said, I think the Texas B12 whatever account, he came and was like, dude, you guys, you're an idiot, you shut up, whatever. They've just been trying to do it. Yeah, it's it's terrible. Like I said, it's just a weird thing. Like I said, the whole deal, and a lot of people's sources just trust me, and it's bro, you can't. I'm sorry,
no, yeah,
But anyway,
yeah, I would say the one thing I think now going back that I really don't like, that I don't think it was false, but it was just a poor choice of words, right? Was in Cale Gundy's statement that he released when he said, I read something off a player's iPad, and more or less the effect, as soon as I realized what I read, I was in shock, right? But then he says right after that, the words, and he put plural, the words I said are inappropriate and, uncalled for, basically.
Right.
And that's where a lot of the confusion, I think, came through this, to where all the rumors started spreading, was everybody was believing that it was a word. In our quickness to read, in our Twitter world reading, right? We don't read critically. And again, the wording wasn't great. It made it sound like he said, like he was reading a kid's iPad and glancing back and forth. Is this on your iPad? And then he's reading some more and he utters it and goes, whoa, 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 and tried to kind of pull it back. Well, then, to find out later on, when you look at his statement, he said plural. And then BV had to clarify it was plural. And again, 2 or 3 words does not make a man's life. 2 or 3 words do not make a man's career or destroy it in any way, shape, or form. And by the way, if you have not gone and listened to KREF, the ref yesterday had Bob Stoops on, and I loved it. They called him what they call him, Father Bob, came to the rescue to line it all out. And Bob said it right. Cale's not a bad man. Cale's not a racist. Cale has great character and is somebody that should definitely still be invited and welcomed as a part of the OU family, but he made a mistake. And it's up to Brent Venables to make a decision in that case. And it's not Brent Venables' fault that Cale Gundy did what he did, right? And he made a decision, and either way, it's a decision he has to live with. And so Bob really could see it from the friend perspective of Cale Gundy, and could see it from the head coach perspective of Brent Venables. But I think as a new coach that's here 6 months, I don't know that there really was another decision for Brent to make. And it doesn't mean that I love it or like it. And again, in no way, shape, or form do I believe that Cale Gundy's legacy should be tarnished for this. I think it should have a moment, right? Like within it. But that's it. But again, this would have had lingering effects if he keeps him around, from we're an accountability culture, doesn't hold up. And I was in several Twitter spaces that day. I cannot tell you how many times, and I'm talking from OU fans to Texas fans to anybody, if he was willing to read that word out loud multiple times, he's used it multiple times somewhere else. That was the constant statement. So, if you keep him on staff, that's that conversation you have to have, and that stigma you got to deal with from a recruiting standpoint, from a everything standpoint. So again, no right way. And again, BV, talked about it all, and just, you could tell one of the best questions on the day was, how do you balance forgiveness and grace and second chances with accountability? And BV did not mince words. He goes, it's really hard. And there's probably going to be times where I err on the side of grace. There's probably going to be times where I err on the side of accountability, and you kind of just have to go with your gut, and you kind of just have to trust it. And I get that. And again, and I feel for Cale Gundy as a person who publicly presents, and not only publicly presents, but my public presentations get aired to the world on the internet. I know how quickly one phrase, one statement, one word can change everything. And I went through it through COVID. I got endless emails through COVID about how I shouldn't even be a pastor because of the way that I talked about COVID, because I said this phrase, or whatever. So it's bad for both ends. The decision's been made, and it's time to move on. And the timing could not be worse. You can't go hire somebody. Like, everybody keeps naming Malcolm Kelly. Malcolm Kelly's got 20 days before TCU starts the season. Even if he wants the OU job, he's not going to do that right now. I also don't think Brent's the kind of guy to make that phone call right now, in this time of the season.
Well, and it was interesting to me because in the press conference, Brent also talked about, like, somebody asked him, how did you find LaDainian Washington? Because he wasn't connected to OU before now.
Right.
And he was like, well, he said, I don't even remember who all he said. He named like 5 people that said that they had worked with him and spoke very highly of him. And he said, within the first 5 minutes talking to him, I was like, dude, this guy's special.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that LaDamian's going to be the permanent hire come, into season or whatever.
Right.
But at the same time, he's a serviceable guy. You're not going to be able to get anybody, at least, you're not going to get anybody better than him before season starts. Like I said, you're 20 days.
Right.
From starting season, it's like, yeah, you're pretty much not going to. But and even if you could, it's like, even if you could bring in Malcolm Kelly, it's like let's just say he did, just as to let everybody play their thought experiment or whatever. Say Malcolm Kelly was on campus today. It's like, do you think in 20 days he's going to be able to build a rapport with the the athletes that he has, like that LaDamian even has? Right, like LaDamian, like he's already said, LaDamian's been involved with these kids. LaDamian's already built trust. LaDamian's already built rapport with them. They respect him. Like, he's built that over the course of the last 7-8 months, right? Since whenever, I think, January, February, whenever we got to campus. So it's like, people are going to try to say that, and it's like, I get it. Like, you want to get some big splash hire, even at wide receiver coach, but it's like, look, we are where we are.
Yeah.
So, but it's like I said, again, and we're going to get into it here in a minute, I think, about it, but it's definitely a tough thing to handle. I can appreciate Brent's stance, because I've seen people, that's the one thing that's kind of frustrating me too, is like, even OU fans are bickering back and forth on what was what Brent did right, or should he, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, the issue at hand is he has to set a precedent, and he has to maintain a rigid standard, because that's his claim. Like, that's his thing. We have a standard and you abide by it, or else, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Cale didn't abide by that. And it is what it is. Like, I really hate it for Cale, but at the same time, Brent, I think it's one of those things that's out of his hands. Like, I don't think it's his only move. So as much as it sucks to say, and as much as I wish that wasn't the case, that's where we are.
Yeah, for sure. And so we'll get into LaDamian Washington in a second. A twofold question for you, Jared, is how much do you think this will impact recruiting? And I'm talking 23 and 24 classes. And then what also how much of an impact do you believe it might have on the field as the season gets underway and games start being played?
Well, how do I say this? Because Brent framed it very well in his press conference again, where he said OU is a better program with Cale Gundy, but OU is going to be just fine without Cale Gundy. And I think that's the case. I mean, yes, like I don't think, as much as LaDamian Washington, like I said, we're going to get into in a minute, as inspiring as he is and how promising he seems to be, he's not going to have 20 plus years of experience coaching, right? And coaching top tier athletes. I mean, how many people has Cale worked with both at running back and wide receiver? So as far as the recruiting impact, I think time will tell, because it's so hard to say with recruiting, right? I think a guy like LaDamian Washington honestly can probably connect with a lot of kids, because he comes from, like I said, I keep wanting to go into it, but
I know.
Based on his background and some of the things that he's had to go through and endure and everything else, it's like, dude, for him to, I bet he's gonna be able to connect. It's just like looking at DeMarco, right? I remember when DeMarco got hired, and everybody was like, "Oh, he can't recruit. He sucks at recruiting." And blah. It's like, dude, you got to give him time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's walking into a situation and he's having to start from the ground up. He's got a name, but he's gonna have to do something with it. And I think that's the same thing. I think LaDamian could do the same thing, but it's just, we're going to, again, everybody be patient on the recruiting front. Now, on the coaching front, yeah, I mean, honestly, with the fortunate thing is, I think with the way Levy's system is it's not, for the receivers, it's not an overly complicated scheme, right? Like, it's not like, run basically as fast as you can on the field, essentially. It's you're basically a track coach. So yeah, it's done. It probably is going to drop a little bit as far as the coaching, how much coaching knowledge or whatever you have is obviously going to be down, because you have let's call him a rookie wide receiver coach. But I also don't think it's going to be anything that's like we're going to be watching the game and being like, oh man, if Cale was here, we wouldn't have seen that happen. You know what I mean? Like I don't think you're going to have that.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the opposite end with you on this one. Now, recruiting wise, obviously the biggest concern was Jaquez Petaway, who tweeted tonight. He's in, right? Like he has said, I'm not going anywhere, Boomer Sooner. So we're good there. It still sounds like things are good with Anthony Evans. So it seems as though this class for 23 is in a hole. 24, we'll see. I think it's just too far to know yet. And it'll just depend on who they get in there and how they do, right? But so far the recruiting impact seems minimal, but I think we got to fast forward to 24 where those contacts that Cale had, those diamonds in the rough that Cale could find because he knew so many guys, is going to go away, and we'll see how that impacts. As far as on the field goes, I agree with you about the wide receiver part. It's not overly complex for the wide receivers. So it really is a matter of just getting them prepared and ready, and I think we'll be able to do that, especially with the other thing that came out in BV's press conference today. LaDainian will be taking over as the interim, but you've got to also remember off the field wise, you still have Matt Wells on this staff, who's been an offensive coordinator and a wide receiver coach in his tenure. You also have Nick Basquin, who is also an off the field helper for the staff. And that's a guy that knows a thing or two about how to play the position very well, as well as a guy who was a walk-on and earned scholarship. So I think there's enough there, but here's the thing. No one during the season is going to, man, if we had Cale, we would have figured this out. But I think it's because we just don't understand how much knowledge offensively Cale brought to the table when they were putting those week-to-week plans together for the defenses they would see. And especially as you're going into the SEC to go against these defenses that are more complex and more difficult, I do believe it's going to have an impact. I just don't think that we're going to think about, I think you and I in a year and a half, we're not going to be doing this podcast going, this is where, man, if Cale hadn't screwed, but like there's a reality to his wealth of knowledge not being there, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, think about it in a different way. It's just like when Bob was stepping down, or even when, like, let's even back up further. When Heupel got fired and they brought in Lincoln, everybody was like, "Who's this guy?" How is this going to work out? And then whenever Bob left and Lincoln came in, it was like, "Oh my God, what's it going to be like? He's had success, but how's he going to be as a head coach?" And it's like, this is like, as much as it's every part of the machine is important, it's like, this is a wide receiver coach. Like, it's not nearly as impactful as a head coach is going to be. So I think that's, I mean, it's definitely going to be impactful. Like you said, we're not going to look back, like you kind of said, we're not going to look back in 5 years and be like, man, if Cale was here, we would be winning national titles every year. It's like, it's not going to make that much of a difference. Is the trajectory of OU really like that much drastically different? Then I don't think so, based on Cale not being there.
Yeah, I just think, and again, I can't disagree with that. I just think that we don't understand it. I think is the way I want to say it. I think we're going to have to realize it does have an impact. I mean, I think we're going to have to realize that, again, you're talking about a guy who has coached tight ends, running backs, wide receivers, played quarterback. I mean, the knowledge this guy's got, and again, to watch how he did in the bowl game, in the Alamo Bowl, and the way he blended some offenses from back in the past and Lincoln Riley's offense together, and it looked great, right? And so that knowledge is not in the room again when you're making an offensive game plan. Again, when a draw play doesn't work, no one would have said, man, wish we'd have had Cale Gundy. But I do think there's going to be some of that. But let's move to the future. Let's get off the negative. Let's move to the positive. Let me give you a little bit of a bio of LaDainian Washington. If you don't know, he did go to school at Missouri, was a captain there his senior season. I believe he had 100 catches in his career for about 1,750 yards, 60 yards, somewhere in that neighborhood. But here's what I love about his story. He's from Shreveport, Louisiana. So number one, if this interim tag gets removed and he gets hired on the staff, you're talking about a guy who has Louisiana roots and is known in Louisiana. That's a positive for recruiting, period. right? Like you could just start right there. But here's what impresses me about him and is also gut wrenching. I watched a video about today. At 5 years old, Washington's father was murdered in Shreveport, Louisiana. At 15, his best friend was then murdered. And then not long after that, his mother was at a basketball game watching him play basketball. And as the game ended, she had a severe stroke and she died at 15 years old, leaving him and his 4 brothers with no parents. And it's a crazy story. He had an older brother who was 19 at the time. The brothers came together and agreed to let the 19-year-old become their guardian so that they did not go into the foster care system and get separated. They got a 2-bedroom apartment. They all got jobs. They all worked. And the oldest brother actually had a newborn child at 19 as well that lived with them in the apartment. And they made it. And as one Missouri coach said in the bio, he said, all you need to know about this kid was this. He was living with 4 brothers with no real adult figures. They were just kind of finding their way because they believed sticking together was better. He didn't have utilities half the time. He wasn't getting a full meal half the time, yet he maintained a 3.5 GPA and is on the verge of being a Division I athlete. That's all you need to know about this guy, right? And I mean, again, wow. He went on to be a motivational speaker, so obviously he's able to connect with people. BV spoke very highly of him, like you said, in the press conference and all those kinds of things. I think that story is going to resonate. And I think I will say this. When you have that kind of life, having to take over for a 23-year tenured coach at the University of Oklahoma and a legend on the staff and as a player, he ain't going to flinch. This is one of the easiest things he's ever had to do in his life is to take this over.
Yeah, I mean, look, like when you look at this issue of you know, what kind of character are you going to have in your new coach, right? Like I think that's a lot of things. People are like who's going to be our new coach? Not only just character, but all that. But it's like, look, like you said, when I read his story, it's like it was almost hard not to tear up reading it because it was like, dude, he's been through so much more than I think I could have said. He went through more by the time he was 15 than I've been through in my entire life. Yep. So you know, I just don't know that you're gonna get anybody better as far as character. That's one thing I would say. Like you said, to stand up, it'd be so easy to say like I'm just gonna go on my own or whatever, or you know. To be quite honest, to be, especially in Shreveport, which has got a lot of rough areas, to fall into some sort of street lifestyle or whatever. It's like there's so many things that could have jerked him off course, and he stayed the course. He worked his butt off and just kept going. Just absolutely amazing that he was able to do what he's been able to do. But
and by the way, we didn't even mention as he went to the NFL was looking promising in some different camps in the NFL and literally split his calf muscle in 2. And when it split, it ripped pieces of bone off, like when it detached from the bone. I mean, and then he came back and still played, I believe it was XFL or Canadian League after that. So this guy's tough as nails, man. He's going to jump in and get after it. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, he's like I said, again, go read his story. There's plenty of places to go read it. Like I said, he was a motivational speaker. So it's like, I think he's going to definitely, motivate the players to, play into that. But, yeah, I don't know that it'll be more than interim. Like, it could be, could not be. But I think that he's going to have every opportunity to try to earn that position. Right. 100%. I mean, if he really keeps connecting, and like I said, and BV said in his press conference, he's like, look, he's built trust. He's built rapport. He's built relationships with these players. He's not their buddy. He doesn't just say, oh, good job. Like, he's honest with them and tells them, you need to do this better. You need to be more accountable here. And, it's like things like that really show you, like, what you have, like I said, as a coach. So, yeah, I like I said, especially after watching BV's press conference today, I'm fine. You know what I mean? Like, as much as I hate it for Cale, again, I'm fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, All right, well, let's get off of all the theories and the what ifs and whatnot. Let's talk a little bit about fall camp and what we've been hearing out of that. I would say two words continue to come around this football team, and that is physical and intense. Matter of fact, Monday at practice, there were several of the reporters that were, they allowed the reporters to watch about 40 minutes of practice. Several of them tweeting and reporting that there were 2 or 3 skirmishes during said practice between players. And again, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that shows the intensity and the physicality that's going on within camp. So seems to be going really good. Is there anything that you've heard or seen or read, Jared, that you're liking about camp so far?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, it feels like I think it's just like across the board, how much like good you're hearing about players. But it's not like one of those things where like all you're hearing is like, oh, everybody's doing great. You know what I mean? Like you've had BV say at times like, so and so needs to do better. Like he's doing really well, but he needs to, get his head down in the classroom, or he needs to do something in the film room or whatever. And so that's definitely something that I think, he actually went into, he said Jalil Farouk, he said, has really matured and has like kind of become somewhat of a leader in the wide receiver room, even though he's still a younger guy. I think he's a redshirt freshman still. I think they redshirted him. So either way, he's a sophomore, real sophomore, or whatever. And yeah, and then he said Nick Anderson, Jaden Gibson, and some others are like freshman guys are stepping up. Like he goes, this isn't a team where he goes, we have a great upperclassmen, but he goes, we've got a lot of great underclassmen that are really, really, shining and that are really maturing and growing in this system. So it's just the things like that. Like it's the culture, right? Like I think that's a way you could frame it.
Yeah. Well, and he even said, right, that the wide receiver room is maybe one of their strongest rooms that they've got. And I think that that's a huge encouragement, right? Because, I mean, we knew Marvin Mims is a real deal and we feel good about a lot of them. But to hear BV say that might be one of the strongest rooms in the building from a leadership and just a player standpoint, I think is huge. The other name that keeps popping up, too, that I hear over and over, and again, Sooner Scoop's been putting up the footage they can of practices when it comes up. David Agwebu, man. Ted Roof loves this guy. BV's talking about this guy. If you haven't seen the Sooner Scoop footage from Monday, he looked like he was, and I didn't get a chance to go back and find out what number it was that he was going against or what player, but it doesn't matter. That's a room full of D1 athletes, and Agwebu throws the man that is supposed to be blocking him in their version of the Oklahoma drill about 20 yards across the field and then just sticks the running back. I mean, it looked great. It looked like what a linebacker play ought to be. And again, you just continue to hear great things about the guy. And I am very excited about him. Now, again, it's early. They've barely been in pads. We'll see what happens as it goes forward, but it's a great start for David Agwebu.
Yeah, I mean, and he's got we just wanted to see it materialize, right? Because we've heard this throughout his career. So it's going to be nice to see if it actually materializes. Now, as somebody else that I know we were going to talk about, but Justin Harrington is another guy that BB talked very highly of today.
Yes.
And has been getting some rave reviews. Now, for those that forget or don't know, Justin Harrington nearly left the program. Like, I think technically left the program, and they welcomed him back.
Yes.
And so,
as a walk-on, by the way, a walk-on, they've welcomed him back.
Yeah. And they said, like, he's keeping his head down. He's working his butt off. BV literally just talked ravingly of him today in the press conference. Yeah. So that's good to see. Because, I mean, again, he easily could have just thrown his hands up and said, I'm out, whatever. And so for him to be stepping up.
Ted Lehman gave him a lot of love today on the radio as I was driving home, actually, after we had kind of written some of this stuff up, and said that he was a guy that he kept waiting to get on the field and said whatever happened with the last staff happened, and he left and didn't want to be here. And then when the new staff came in, he asked to come back. He loved OU. There was something about that previous staff he was not on board with. And remember, Justin Harrington was like the number one cornerback JUCO recruit coming out of JUCO the year that we got him. So we got the number one corner and the number one defensive tackle, which was Perrion. So man, if Justin Harrington can find stuff out, but man, and again, the word you hear with him is physical and versatile, and that is fun to hear.
Yeah, and it's just like I said, it's just amazing to see. So I think that it's going to be interesting, and then that's what we're going to get into in a minute. That's the other thing is exciting part about the season is there's so many guys with so much promise that it's like if it can materialize on the field just 50% of the time, it's like this team could be actually really stinking good already.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Yeah, because the other name too that I wanted to mention very quickly within all that is Gavin Sawchuk. And again, Javante Barnes, I think, has had like a hamstring issue here the first couple days of camp. So that's why you're not hearing his name. But again, that doesn't matter to me. What matters is Sawchuk now is getting more opportunity and he's taking advantage of them. And again, one of the things that you're hearing is his body is completely transformed. So whatever he did from the end of his senior season till now, he knew he needed to get thicker, stronger, and more built for the college game. And it sounds like he's very much done that. And not only is he one of the fastest guys on the team, but he looks the part of a Division I running back right now. And again, is he going to get 25 carries a game? No. But that's what you want, right? You want your true freshman to be that guy that can come in and be the game changer if needed. And even maybe mix the pace up a little bit, but is ready. But now, next year you are in very, very good position. So pretty awesome stuff, man. Pretty awesome stuff. So what do we need to hear now? What do you feel like as we move into these next 2 weeks of camp before they get into game preparation? What do you think that we need to hear now? Does that make sense? Like that we know, what do we need to hear, I guess, out of camp about this team as a whole, or maybe individual players for you to feel really confident about the season upcoming? That's what I'm trying to say. It took me forever to get that worded out.
Well, I mean, I think part of that is we're just going to have to be patient to some degree because, it's still early into fall camp, right? There's still 20 days, which isn't a ton of time, but a whole lot of things can change in 20 days. Somebody can get hurt, somebody can get dinged up. But at the same time, like, I think I just want to keep hearing, like, I want to hear, another thing that was kind of talked about in the press conference today that I want to hear more of is, the physicality. He's like, and he goes, and Schmitty has made it so these guys are bigger, they're faster, they're stronger. He's like, these are whole. He goes, I walk in here, and now I look at these guys, and I'm like, man, they fit the part. And you want to keep hearing things like that. And I think, honestly, I do think it's going to take them a little bit of time through fall camp, hopefully before the season starts, to get that. Like, I know they're being physical now, but I don't think that they're up to what BV wants them to be physically as far as their physicality. So it's going to be, I want to keep hearing how that's just kind of like, I just want to hear that knob turning, you know what I mean? Like, I just want to hear it progressively get more. That's something that's talked about, and stuff like that. Cause I honestly, like, I already feel pretty good just based on the leadership, that this team appears to have. Like I said, VV seems, at least at this point, extremely genuine. So I don't think if they had a problem with leadership, I think he would come out and say that. And that's not what he said. He's basically said everybody's bought in, everybody's just completely absorbed in it. So
yeah, and I think for me, I would agree with that. But I think the biggest thing that I want to hear for the next couple of weeks is that they just know what their job is. I want to hear, as we hear reports about camp, that there's not busts. I don't want to see and read reports that, well, the offense kind of got the edge today as the defense got confused several times, right? Like, you don't like, I want to see, like, no, I just want to see the offense dominated, the defense dominated. I don't want to hear about busts and assignments for the offense or the defense. And so, the less and less and less we hear about that moving through camp, I think bids very well for the season. So speaking of the season and camp and all those things, we're kind of breaking down over the next 3 weeks as well, positions. So just kind of giving you a preview of our thoughts what we've seen in the past, what little things we've read, heard, whatever. And so last week we did a couple positions. This week we are going to start with cornerbacks. Jared, what do you think is going to happen at the corner spot?
I mean, I think we can both agree Woody Washington is basically he's going to be one, right? Like it's his job to lose in some.
He is the alpha of the room, 100%. Yeah.
Now outside of that, this is where it gets really weird. There's a lot of guys on this roster that I can look at in the secondary. Well, I mean, in the whole team, but especially the secondary, it seems, where it was like, I want to know if the Schmitty effect is how much it's going to impact their abilities, right? Like how much is it going to enhance them? Guys like Jaden Davis or Billy Bowman or any of those, like some of those guys. What are they going to be like? With some Schmitty workouts and some, adding some weight. And when you look at the secondary, you've got some guys that are freaking huge. Like I was just looking, and I actually have pulled up the deal right now. Key Lawrence, right, is 6'1", 205 pounds now.
Well, yeah, but he's going to be at safety, right?
Well, right, yeah. But I'm just saying, like, I'm pretty sure that's another, like, I'm pretty sure it's like almost 10 or 15 pounds more than what he weighed last season. So it's just, again, I'm just highlighting that. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of guys on this roster. I feel like, because I was really impressed with him his freshman year, I think it was his freshman year when he played. I think Jaden Davis is going to kind of crack into that lineup. He's obviously got the physical tools. I think there was some issues with him on the whole mental capacity and just being physical. And like I said, I think some of that's going to be remedied with the new defensive philosophy, and also just Schmitty getting a hold of him and sculpting him into a machine. And it's kind of crazy for me to think. For some reason in my head I thought he was like a junior at most. He's a senior. So he's got that upperclassman leadership quality about him too. So
yeah. Well, and again, to just echo what you're saying about size, right? Kenai Walker is a guy that's a transfer from Louisville, right? A freshman, 6'2", 202 is what he came in, right? Jaden Rowe, which I was shocked. I thought for sure Jaden Rowe was going to be the cheetah position for Venables defense. They're working him at corner. 6'2", 218 pounds. Let me say that again. 6'2", 218
playing corner.
Pounds, playing corner.
Not
and they're
safety,
saying he's
corner.
one of the two fastest guys on the team. And I thought for sure he was safety or cheetah, right? So the size difference is there. What I'm very interested to know is, I agree with you, Woody Washington for sure. But like with CJ Caldone, right, who you transfer in for his last year of eligibility from Wyoming, team captain, except like, how does that conversation go down? And what is it for him to come here and then not play if these other guys, you see what I'm saying? Like, or a Trey Morrison, who's a senior from North Carolina transferring. Like, these are guys that were already at programs that were getting all conference honors, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just curious, like, again, was it just, we're going to give you a chance, and they believed in themselves so much that they wanted to come to OU and crack in? Because again, DJ Graham, what happens with him? Kenai Walker, what happens with him? Coldon, Morrison, Jaden Davis, I'm with you, man. When he came in as a true freshman, I thought, man, this kid is going to be really good. And he just kind of declined every year after that, right? And then you still got Gentry Williams in this. I mean, there are just so many. And I will be shocked if you don't see 4 to 5 corners play very consistently throughout the season. I think there's going to be a top 5 that constantly rotate in. I'm not sure who that's going to be. But man, what a problem to have to name that many guys that really have a chance to be a part of this rotation at corner.
Yeah, and that's why it was so funny to me, because it's one of those things that there's been so many guys that have been raved about at some point throughout their rival or whatever, and some guys that you've even seen on the field that have had the athletic ability, right? It's just kind of putting it together in their heads. Like that's why I had to pull up the roster because it's like, dude, there's so many names. Like you could like, is this gonna be a hockey rotation in the secondary? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it honestly you probably almost could. I bet you could just rotate in safe or cornerbacks like nothing. So, but yeah, still very a very promising unit, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's move to defensive end. Another very important position. I think it is fair to say at this point that Ethan Downs has asserted himself as a guy that is definitely going to be there with being invited to Big 12 Media Days. Not to mention he legitimately looks like the Terminator now after working with Schmidt for an offseason. Reggie Grimes as well. Is there anybody else that you see, or is it just these two guys have really got to carry the water for you, Jared? Kind of what are you thinking and seeing at defensive end?
Well, I mean, Ethan Downs. Let's take Ethan Downs real quick because I do want to highlight him real quick because he is one of my more favorite players on this team. And last year was like he had the speed, he had the jump off. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't very big, right? Like he was very undersized. I think he was like when he got to campus, he was like 220 pounds or something. For those that are wondering, he is now 6'4", 263 pounds, and looks like somebody that I never want to meet in a dark alley. So yeah, I mean, but again, this is another unit that has a lot of guys that have at least flashed some sort of potential. Now, like you said, especially in BV system, the defensive line as a whole is going to be extremely important. So I really don't know who I'm going to pick because, like I said, I think that Grimes and Stripling, obviously are going to be in that rotation. And outside of that, I mean, I really, I don't know, Brendan Walker, maybe. There's just a ton of guys, but I don't know. And again, a lot of this is going to be, this is one of those things that I don't want to keep hiding behind it, but it's like with the Schmitty effect, again, some of these guys, there may be somebody that comes off the radar that's completely off the radar that comes in and just blows it up because they got in the Schmitty workouts and it just revolutionized them into a different player.
Right.
And I because I think it is very evident at this point, especially how not that BV and staff have said, oh, the previous strength and conditioning sucked, or even the players haven't said that, but you can tell that there's a whole different mentality and there's a whole different feel. They're a lot stronger. They're a lot faster. Guys look like they don't look like they're going to, win a male bathing suit contest or whatever, but they look built, right? Like you wouldn't want to fight them.
Right.
And they just look tough and grizzled now. So there's a lot of guys. There's so many guys. I don't know. It'd be hard for me to single out somebody on defensive end.
Yeah. I mean, again, yeah, Grimes needs to live up to his rating this year. This is the year he needs to make that move and needs to be that guy, right? For me anyway. He's a guy that I definitely want to see really step up the game and take off. Same with Ethan. Want to see him be more sound instead of just his motor was great. His recognition of what was going on, not so great. Hopefully that takes a step. The other guy that obviously has been talked about a lot, and I'm very curious to see if he's going to be more of a specialist or all the time, is Marcus Stripling. Chavis has just sung his praises up and down about how great he has been. So we'll see. But I mean, to me, man, that's like a 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 9, just dream to put him out there and say, just go. I mean, just go eat and hunt the quarterback, right? Seems that way. Jonah Lulu is a guy that they've raved about bringing in from Hawaii. Haven't really heard a lot about him. And like you said, that I think one that could be another fascinating because he is, I think, a little bit bigger, but a similar kind of game a little bit to Stripling is Brendan Walker. I've been high on him since he came to OU. His athleticism is freakish. If he can just figure it out, I think it'd be great. And then, of course, you got the freshman, Mason Thomas. I can't remember, but yeah, R Mason, Thomas. I can't remember something Mason Thomas out of Florida. That's a true freshman. We'll see if he can come in and contribute. But I mean, again, I do think you're going to be able to lean on Stripling. You're going to be able to lean on Grimes. You're going to be able to lean on Downs. But those are also 3 guys that we have not seen enough from in the past to feel overly confident about this defensive end position. They gotta really take it up a notch. So we'll see what happens there. And then still dealing with the end. Let's go the offensive side. Tight end. How do you feel about the tight end position?
I mean,
hold on. I got to reword that. How do you feel like the roster shakes out with the guys?
How do you feel like the roster shakes its tight end?
That doesn't sound good either. Okay, so just anyway, tight end. I can't say that in a way that doesn't.
I mean, look, there's no way. There's not really two ways to slice this. This is actually a pretty thin unit right now at OU. There's not a ton of guys, but they have some promise. Like you said, you already have Braden Willis, who's pretty much a proven commodity that we all have said since his time in Norman that he was underutilized. And you could tell from the get-go, he was bought into the whole BV system. He was bought into everything that was going on. So I think that's going to be a guy. Now, obviously, Caden Helms is another guy, and Daniel Parker, two guys I think that they've talked a little bit about, especially Daniel Walker. But he's kind of more of a, he's a transfer from Mizzou, and so he's he's more of a blocking tight end, right? In Levy's system, I think he could do something special. Now, I don't think he's going to be the guy that you're going to see have Mark Andrews levels of receiving stats, right? But as far as making an impact on the field, I think he's going to get a lot of playing time and all that. And the other guy that I would highlight is Jason. I always butcher his name. Jason Llewellyn, I guess. Llewellyn. Yeah. Llewellyn. Okay, Jason Llewellyn. Because they've even talked about, like, there was rumors at one point in camp that they were talking about moving him to like offensive line because he's so good at blocking and he's so physical and he's so, got that mean streak to him. And that's Levy. That's what Levy feeds off of. That's what Levy's system is totally 100% looking for. So I think he could be somebody that you see as a true freshman come in and actually get some love.
Yeah. I still am on that train. I do think eventually he ends up at offensive tackle. Llewellyn does. Parker is known for his blocking, but if you remember the spring game, they threw to him a lot. And he did very, very well, which is exciting because when you start thinking about going into a 2 tight end set with Parker and Willis both on the field, man, you could really create some issues. Because Willis is more than comfortable to split out into a slot-like position as well. And so that could be huge. The name I would keep an eye on as far as making a splash, and when I say a splash, I'm gonna go back to the freshman year of Calcaterra, and that is Caden Helms. I think Caden Helms is a guy that you're going to see in goal line, red zone type situations they put on the field because of his size and athleticism. I think he'll get a shot there. I think. But he's a guy that could easily work his way up into that 3rd spot as long as he can be a little bit physical on the end. But yeah, tight end is a little thin. But at the top with Parker and Willis, man, you got some pretty awesome flexibility there and some real fun and nightmares that you can cause defenses to put both those guys on the field and then not have a clue what OU is going to run from one play to the next from a personnel standpoint with the same guys is pretty exciting to see. So, so that's position breakdowns, kind of working through that. So let's get into the recruiting side of things. There's not a ton to update here. As we mentioned earlier, our number one thing when we talked this through and we're typing this back and forth to each other was Petaway. He seems solid. We're good there. That was the number one thing on the recruiting front was, do we lose Jacques Petaway and all the change? We seem good there. The news moving ahead is Jacob Johnson is committing this weekend. You've just had Jordan Renaud come down to a final 2 between us and Bama. And so that's huge. And then the other big news that has come out is Peyton Bowen and Yates, both out of Denton Guyer. There is all kinds of smoke everywhere from all the recruiting services and everything else that for whatever reason, we're going to know if anything is legitimate with those two within the next 2 weeks. There's something about the next 2 weeks that is moving that. And by the way, in 2 weeks is also when Makari Vickers is anticipated to commit as well. And again, Ronald, Jacob Johnson, and Vickers, I all believe are already locks for OU.
Well, and like I said, it's, Renaud, I don't know. I feel weird about it because I know some people are saying Bama, and maybe that's just, how things have played out in the past. But at the same time, it's like I noticed, the one thing that I did notice is like, I think I saw like 3 or maybe 4 2023 or 2024 guys that retweeted his thing that are OU commits. I can't remember who all it was, but there was some current OU commits that retweeted it and like I think even one of them retweeted and put like a lock, and one of them put like eyeballs and all that. So that kind of, I don't know that I'm probably as comfortable with it as you are, but I definitely think, it's 50-50 in my mind. But yeah, Bowen and Yates, and that's the thing is, look, Jackson Arnold, if Jackson Arnold has anything to say about it, Bowen and Yates will end up at OU because he is recruiting them nonstop.
Hard. Yeah.
And everybody that was on the Jackson Arnold's going to leave OU, he's going to decommit and all that. It's like, he sure is doing a lot of work for recruiting to be wanting to leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, recruiting's fine. Petaway, like I said, he reaffirmed him like not too long before we started the podcast. Put out a tweet that said, I'm locked in, whatever, Boomer Sooner. Yeah. So I think we can all put that to bed and just enjoy him being in this class. So, But yeah, again, recruiting is just taking off. So.
And I forgot to mention, which, by the way, shout out to Brandon Drum and Parker Thune. They did a Twitter space. I think it was 2 nights ago. I can't remember now. Whatever, this week. And Derek LeBlanc jumped up and became a speaker in the group. And so they let people ask him some questions, and he was up for it. And somebody asked him about David Hicks. Derek LeBlanc literally said this. He goes, "Are you recording this?" And Drum said, "Yes." He goes, "And I hope everyone else is recording it too." So I literally immediately went to screen record and hit record, and I've got it. He said, "I am on David Hicks, and he will be with me in this class before it's all said and done. I am bringing him with me." So, again, he's not saying that Hicks is committed, but what he's saying is he is doing everything in his power to get Hicks here, which is another great lean. And looking with Renaud, I feel very confident for this reason. When he had put out a tweet at some point, my decision's coming very soon. One of those vague tweets, how kids do, right? Like it's coming, but they don't give you any information, right? It was the same day that another defensive lineman had committed to Alabama. And so that happened. Renaud's tweet happened. And not long after, I can't remember, it was one of the support staff guys, not an on the field coach, but one of the support staff guys did dominoes. Right. And so when my little investigative Twitter reporting, putting it all together, they filled their spots at defensive line. Renaud now knows what his decision is because the decision's kind of been made for him, right? That Alabama's full. Staff then gets the notification, "I'm coming your way," and the dominoes falling. They took that kid. They're not taking you. Here we are. Let's ride. So again, that's not me talking to we're not journalists here, right? But that's me just looking at the tea leaves through all that stuff happening. So we'll see what happens. And like you said, with Bowen and Yates, you got Arnold on them. You got, we've talked about on here, Bowen's girlfriend goes to OU as well. I believe she plays soccer or volleyball or something.
I believe.
So she's here. Arnold's here. He's got a great relationship. And then when you add on to that, him and Yates are very tight and know each other well. And the fact that Yates is considering it. So, there's a lot there. But again, I don't know what to make of it, man, because he's visited so many times and stayed committed to Notre Dame. I'm not sure what to think. So we'll see. But again, we should know whether the dream of getting Yates and Bowen is a reality in the next 2 weeks. So that's a pretty exciting thing.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, it's going to definitely be, like I said, the next really even few weeks are going to be really interesting to see how they play out. This class could be the best that we've had in a long, long time.
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
It could be from a recruiting services scoring. That's what we should say, because there were some classes back in the day that would kill this class. But from a scoring and recruiting services ranking teams, this will be the highest scored, maybe highest ranked class that OU's ever had from that side of things.
And let me say this before, because even if that becomes the case, right? Like, let's say OU ends up with a top 5 class. Guys, they don't hand out the trophy at the end of recruiting season, okay? They don't.
Correct.
So, still got to put a product on the field. I have all the faith in Brent Venables, but the kids still have to get it together. They have to keep their heads on straight, and they have to go to class and do all the things that they're supposed to do. So, don't think because you got the top class in the nation that you're going to be the top team in the nation. That's not how that works. So,
right. Yeah, don't be Texas. That's what we're saying. Don't be Texas. That's basically what we're saying. Yeah. I did want to try to talk Thunder tonight, but we're just going to run out of time. And so I will just say this. For many people have been asking, so just wanted to let you know, I looked up October 17th. Okay, so about 2 months or so from now, that is when the final roster has to be set. Okay, so I would definitely tell you, if you are in the Thunder camp of things, to be looking for those updates of guys being cut, traded, etc., because that's all going to be happening over the next month or two. And I also think that you're going to see some training camp type stuff. And I think it's going to be very, very, very competitive leading up to that, to see who's going to make this roster and who's going to make it. So should be really, really fun. So keep your eyes out for that date and going that way. NFL wise, hey, guess what, Jared? I'm going to go ahead and say that Baker might start in Carolina.
Yeah,
maybe.
It was really kind of funny because let me preface all of this by saying we're of course biased, right? But at the exact same time, I was like, people were like, what's funny is one of my boys that I know through Twitch, he's a big football fan. He for some reason likes Sam Darnold. I can't remember his reasoning. He's like, oh, I think Sam's got a chance. And I was like, man, I think he was a decent college quarterback, and I think he's been a terrible professional quarterback. And I was like, I can't see Darnold, winning that battle. Yeah, Baker's dominated. And not only that, I don't know if you saw some of the articles that came out, I think like today and yesterday. I can't remember who it was. One of their veteran guys on defense, I can't remember his name. But he was like, he goes, look, Baker talks trash, and he goes, and I love it. He's like, he goes, I've got guys that are fired up and wanting to play. They usually just don't say anything. He's like, he goes, we love it. He goes, it's chippy and chirpy, and we talk back and forth. He goes, good or bad day, Baker comes out and he's talking. And, I think that attitude, it's the thing that as OU fans we understood to fall in love with him about, right? Was that chip on his shoulder, that very, swagger he carries, or whatever you want to call it, is just so crazy motivational that I think it's just special. So, and a lot of guys have come out and said like that's how they feel about it.
Yeah, I agree. Here's what makes me laugh the most, and I want to happen so badly. There were a couple of beat writer type guys the other day on Twitter talking about Matt Corral finally got some work with the twos, and one or two of them said they would not be surprised if Matt Corral is already asserting himself to surpass Sam Darnold. And can I just say the victory lap and the ratio job that should be done on social media on Colin Cowherd, if Sam Darnold not only gets beat out by Baker Mayfield, but gets beat out by freaking Matt Corral, who's a rookie. I mean, there might not be any sweeter bliss than that.
Let me put it this way too, though. Matt Corral, in my estimation, was a better college quarterback than Sam Darnold was.
Oh, 100%. I'm with you. I'm just saying, after all the BS about he's big, he's strong, and and he carries himself like this, and that's what you have to win. Like, oh my God. I mean, just the constant. He's so young. He's going to get like, I just want it. I want it so bad. I want nothing more than as they start cutting the roster down and say, we're going to go with Baker Mayfield and Matt Corral, Sam Darnold, find you another squad. Like, that would be so good. I would love every second of it. And I expect you, Sooner Nation. Let me say that again. I expect you to ratio Colin Cowherd if it happens. I expect it to happen.
Yeah. It's definitely a an interesting development. Now, I know one thing we're going to talk about, but I want to jump to our next note.
Okay.
Did you see who the Browns starting quarterback is going to be preseason game 1?
Yes.
Officially announced.
That's not. Yeah.
So I
mean,
just don't like. Let me just phrase it this way. Again, if we're going off pure quarterback ability, I have I'm not going to have any problems arguing that Deshaun Watson is a top tier quarterback, right?
Right.
As far as pure passing ability. However, the optics and the public, like the PR nightmare that's going to come with putting him out on the field when there's a looming, now there's an appeal to have, and Goodell dragged Watson. I think it was yesterday, maybe it was today. Just dragged him and was like, he needs to be suspended for a year minimum, and just completely eviscerated him for like 5 full minutes. Publicly. And rightfully so. Like, I mean, not often I say this, but, applause to you, Goodell. But I can't understand it. Like, their PR department is got to be a bunch of monkeys throwing feces at the wall or something. I have no idea what's going through their minds out there, because it doesn't make any sense.
Well, there's a couple different things. Number one, you're talking about a franchise that before Baker Mayfield, right, was 1-32, 1-31. Yeah, 1-31. They have been so starved to be relevant. They have been so starved to be good. They don't care. They have decided to throw character, to throw it all out the window. And by the way, let's not forget that they also have Kareem Hunt on that roster. They've had guys. And again, I believe in second chances, all the stuff. But number one, the Browns don't care. They just want to win. They just want to win, and that's it. Number two is this. When you are in that state, you're willing to bend the curve anyway. And here's really what sucks about this whole Deshaun thing. Again, like we talked about last week, there is what's right, there is what's wrong, and then there's what's legal and illegal. Mm-hmm. And whether we like it or not, and I don't, there are no criminal charges against Deshaun Watson. If everything that I've read is what has happened, it is creepy. It is gross. It is mentally unstable. It's a lot of things. But unfortunately,
there's no other way to slice it. It's wrong. It's wrong.
Wrong, 100%. But legally, there's not much. There is not much you can do from a legal standpoint against Deshaun Watson other than just get to say that this guy is really weird and make him pay a bunch of money to women. And I hate that. As a father of a daughter, it sickens me to think that if she went into the career of being a masseuse and this happened to her, there's nothing that can be done. Is frustrating. And it's really true when you have as much money and influence as power as Deshaun Watson. So from a legal standpoint, the Browns don't care. You can not like them all you want. You can do, and they're just going to keep falling back on, and this has been their phrase, he committed no acts of violence towards women. He committed no acts of, whatever towards, and they're going to rest on that. And I hate it. And so, and here's the other, it's a preseason game. No one cares. No one cares because it's preseason.
Deshaun Watson is going to get booed at every away stadium he goes to. Maybe his own stadium. Yes. I don't even know. I know.
Right.
Actually,
so you might as well do the preseason and get over with.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, there's no way to slice it. Like I said, it's wrong. What's really frustrated me is I saw some people on Twitter the other day that were like, well, all these women are going to get millions of dollars, and I was like,
No.
okay, I was like, let's just say that it is true that they all get millions of dollars. They're not all getting millions of dollars, but let's just say they are. It's like that doesn't remove the traumatic experience that they had to experience.
No.
From him, right? Like, I'm not saying that money doesn't make life easier, but it's like that's not going to fix the situation, right? Just to know that the person that did that to you is just out walking around and having a, quote unquote successful career, making millions of dollars a year. So it's a terrible situation. And like I said, I'm glad Baker's out of there. Out of that organization. Kareem Hunt's trying to leave now. I mean, it's like it really feels like the organization's falling back apart again, and part of me just like wants to see it because it's like you've done this, you made your bed, lay in it. So, but we'll see how it all plays out. I just thought that it was interesting that they came out and were like, "Oh yeah, he's our preseason starter," and I was like, "Oh
yeah."
Okay.
I mean, I think for them, like you said, yes, he's going to get booed, but I feel like they're trying to go ahead and get as much of that over with in preseason as they can, right? So if he goes and plays, I don't even know where their first preseason game is. Are they going to boo in that hard game too? Probably not. Kind of like KD, right? The first game back for KD, the place is coming unglued. They, second time he comes back, it's there, but it's not really. The third, you know what I mean? Like, so they're going to try to get it all out in preseason and make the season, be what it is. So it is what it is. But look, we try to focus on Oklahoma sports, right? I am so and like I know that we mainly do Sooner stuff, but I said it time and time again, and I'm just going to keep going with it until I have to be shut up and told I was an idiot. But do you know who took reps with the first team defense of the team they were drafted to this week on multiple occasions?
Who's that?
Malcolm Rodriguez, baby, from Oklahoma State. I said it time. He was the best player in the draft. He was the best player in the draft from the state of Oklahoma. Let me rephrase that. From all the Oklahoma prospects in the draft. Not the best. I know. No. From the state of Oklahoma. And look, I think Nick Benito's got a great chance and some of those other guys. But Malcolm Rodriguez is a freaking machine, man. And now all you're seeing every day is more and more videos of him just blowing plays up. And here's what's funny. I told several of my OSU friends, I'm going to keep saying this, OSU fans that are friends of mine, dude, he's so good. And they're all like, he'll probably play some special teams. He's not that great. I'm like, what is wrong with you? He's the best player y'all have had for 4 freaking years.
I don't want to speak for OSU fans. I'm obviously not an OSU fan. But in speaking to OSU fans, I think they just have like an automatically pessimistic look. Like,
yeah,
because it's like even years that they should beat, like they have a good chance to beat OU. They're like, oh no, we'll probably lose. It's like
we'll probably,
like literally we could get to Bedlam this year and like half the offense is injured and they'll be like, oh, we're probably gonna get blown out, and you're like, what? So I think that's just their attitude as a fan base. But yeah, no, Malcolm Rodriguez, super successful, and just like he's got that dog mentality. He's not scared to get out there and go hit somebody, and he's got a crazy work ethic. Like it's hard if you really just watch him and even hear him talk. It's hard not to cheer for him, whether you're an OU fan or an OSU fan or anything in between.
Look,
you want to pull for him.
As an OU fan, he is one of 2 players that I hated, but with a deep respect, right? One was Colt McCoy. I hated freaking playing that guy. Like, he was just going to find a way to will his team to win. But I respected him for the way he wasn't a jerk, humble, played like all the stuff. And Malcolm's the same way. Like, I hated playing that dude. You knew he was going to come through and make plays and just create havoc. But respected him on a huge level. Who said what in the chat? I see you reading
Nemo
over here.
says we're gonna have Daryl's name changed to Just Okay State, Daryl.
Oh my gosh. Nemo, shut your mouth. Hey,
Yeah,
look, I do cheer for Oklahoma State though. 10 weeks out of the season, right? Like, or out of the year, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean it's like I said. I hope he has success. I really do. And what's funny about that is I say that I have a bet with somebody. I have a $10. It's just a $10 bet that the Lions make it to the playoff. And I was like, yeah, I'll take that. I'm taking the bet that they don't make the playoffs. Like,
wow, yeah, that's lofty. I'm not going even. So there's a guy in my fantasy group that's a big OSU fan. So every day I've been posting highlights of Malcolm Rodriguez, like every single day, because he's the one who told me he'd only play special teams. John, I know you're listening. And he said, if you don't draft Detroit's defense, then you're a fraud. And I was like, oh, no. One really good play on your defense does not mean that you have a draft-worthy defense at all. So we're not going there.
Let me put it this way. When the person mentioned doing the bet, I like Googled. I was like, is Matthew Stafford going back to Detroit? You know what I mean? I was like, what makes you think this? But I mean, they're a big Lions fan. I respect them, but it is what it is.
That's awesome. Well, and then we always end with just some lighthearted entertainment, chat, catch up time. Gray Man on Netflix. Have you seen it?
I have seen it.
And your thought scale of 1 to 10?
I thought it was really good. I would say 1 to 10. I'm gonna give it a 7. Like, it was really good. It wasn't like elite, but it was really, really good.
They could have done so much more with his childhood story. That's what, like, I wish they, like, instead they had like a glimpse and then him just this one little moment where he said, this is what it was like, like. But obviously the things that happened to him as a child impacted him so much. I wish they could have done more with that,
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%.
But really good. Chris Evans is a great bad guy in the movie. Insane and really good. Fight scenes. I mean, I loved it. I thought I'd probably go 7, 5, 8, somewhere in there just for pure entertainment value. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so and what's funny is I'm laughing because our next note, Nemo says Prey was freaking amazing and Bullet Train was awesome. I haven't seen Bullet Train yet. I do want to go see it. I haven't seen that either.
Prey's really good, man.
It's on Hulu. Is it on Hulu?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's a very cool take on Predator. Very cool take on Predator.
Yeah, I'll have to. I don't even know my Hulu login. I don't ever use Hulu, so but I'll have to figure that out. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't know how to feel about it because it's it's like the Predator and then like the Predator reboot sort of thing or something.
Well, it's the prequel, so it is Predator coming. What I mean, they're not saying for sure, but it's like it's the first time ever that he's come and hunted on Earth because he's hunting things like he's not just hunting humans, right? He's hunting animals and all kinds of stuff, and it's kind of like he's working his way up the chain for hunting things here. Even like his helmet and armor and stuff is primitive even for him. And not to like, but it comes down to him versus the Comanche Indians. Like them just kind of going to war together. And it is really, really cool take on it. Love it.
Yeah, I'll have to definitely check it out.
So, and then as a dad, I watch some really ridiculous things. My son, that's 21 months old, has gotten into the short stuff a lot. And man, he's had me watching these 2 shorts that don't have any words. It's just music. And they're all these like, it's a show that's like a crazy metaphor for something. And oh my, I can't take it anymore, man. Like I can't. He watched one of them the other day. It was an 8-minute short. We watched it 9 times in a row. And I'm just like,
was it the dumpling one?
Yes.
Because I sat there and watched that with y'all like 4 or 5 times. And you know what I'm going to do? When he's old enough, when he gets to be, 10 years old, when he's like Tal's age, I'm going to be like, hey, bro, buddy, look, your Uncle Jared, look, he was watched a stinking dumpling short for about 2 hours. After turning off an OU Texas game that we were rewatching. Yes. So I love you. Just want you to know if you ever wonder, does Uncle Jared love you? Yeah. This is a story to remind you.
Let me just show you how stupid you were as a child and how you've matured. Like that's what I want to show you here. But I found the I Am Groot shorts on Disney Plus. Oh my, so good. So like very mature humor is not the right way, but like your 21-month-old has no idea like what's going on, so he's laughing, and it's really like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they just did that kind of stuff. It's really good, so you got to check that out as well.
Yeah. And so I was gonna real quick. I was gonna say I've started watching The Sandman and Lock and Key. Season 3 just dropped, I think, today. But yeah, Sandman is really good. It's actually based off a comic book that was like said to be unfilmable or could not be translated to film in any way. And it's actually been. It starts off kind of slow because it's like you've got to build up. It's essentially kind of a comic book origin story is where you're kind of getting at, sort of some well, not even really an origin story, but really launching where he is starting or like having a rebuild basically. But he's basically the Sandman, so he controls dreams. He's like the god of dreams. And there's like there's an episode where he goes. This isn't really a spoiler because it's like I'm thinking episode 2. He goes and meets with Lucifer Morningstar, and so like there's all these other like they're like not really deities but kind of deities. That, you know, from all kinds of religions and mythologies and stuff. So it's pretty cool. But it's pretty interesting. But yeah, and Lock and Key is like it's kind of like, it's a weird show where this family they can make keys that do magical things. Like basically there's magic in these keys and they can do certain things, but there's demons that are trying to steal them to do what? I don't know. But I think this is the last season of it, so I'm powering through those right now.
That's awesome. I have not started or even had those on my radar, so I'll have to kind of see if I can find some space to get those going. Just finished Alone as well. If you've never watched the documentary, reality TV thing Alone.
Oh no, I've started watching, but I haven't finished it.
And saw who the winner was, and dude, what those people go through, man, it's pretty impressive year in and year out. So, and now I'm ready because they're doing the Extreme Alone is coming out now, where instead of dumping them like in early October where they've got time to build their shelter and stuff, they're dropping them in like middle of November and asking them to survive like in the winter in like northern Canada. So that should be fun to watch as well.
Yeah, and real quick, because I know Nemo's in chat, I actually been watching some Peaky Blinders every now and then, and another thing is like I just had a bunch of like on like TikTok or YouTube or whatever, had a bunch of like Thomas Shelby quotes, and so I've been really kind of getting hooked on that again. So I even tweeted out today, I was like, I think as men we should all agree that we want like a little bit of that Thomas Shelby attitude, because it's just, you know, he's just such a badass, to be honest. So
yeah.
But anyway, yeah, no, there's a lot of good stuff out right now. So yeah, I definitely want to go see Bullet Train because, you know, I'm a big Brad Pitt fan. So
absolutely. Well, good stuff. Well, I think that's all we have for tonight. We hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's shed some light, or at least just been some good conversation with other OU fans and Oklahoma sports fans, kind of talking through some things. Again, we're not journalists. We are fans that just like talking this stuff and just try to create a platform where maybe you can listen and interact doing that. You can always join us on the live stream when we do it. And then, of course, just through the comments and those things. So, again, like, subscribe, leave comments. Let us know how to make this thing better, get it where it's going to be. Next week, we will have a big announcement for you, by the way, really big. So you're going to want to check in next week to hear that. So, again, we're having a great time. We hope you are too. I'm Daryl.
I'm J-Rod.
And we will talk to you guys later. Bye, Baker.